A poor girl holds out a photo and gives it to the young billionaire. But when he asks, "Why are you giving me this?" she answers, "My mom, before she died, said you were my dad." And his reaction shocked everyone. The grey Manhattan sky seemed to weigh on Ethan Cole's shoulders as he walked out of Madison Towers, just like he did every day at exactly 7 to 12 p.m. The chilly autumn air bit at his face, but he barely felt it. The numbers from the latest financial report still danced in his mind, yet another billion to add to a fortune he didn't know how to spend. Ethan adjusted his black overcoat and held his leather briefcase against his chest as if it were a shield. 33 years old, owner of half the skyscrapers he could see from his penthouse window, and still he walked alone, always alone. The ghost billionaire, as the business magazines called him, the man who built a digital empire and vanished behind it. That was when he felt it. A light tug on the hem of his coat. Ethan stopped, confused. People rarely touched him. He looked down and found a pair of huge blue eyes staring up at him with disconcerting intensity. A small girl, no older than 5, her brown hair in messy braids, wearing a faded red coat at the sleeves. She was holding something in both hands, as though it were a fragile treasure. "Are you Ethan Cole?" the girl asked in a thin, clear voice that seemed to cut through the city noise. Ethan blinked, unaccustomed to unscheduled conversations. "Yes, I am." The girl took a deep breath, as if gathering all the courage in the world, and lifted her chin with determination. "My mum, before she died, said you were my dad." Time froze. The pedestrians around them continued their frantic rush, but to Ethan they were just distant blurs. The blood drained from his face. His mind, trained to calculate risks in milliseconds, suddenly seemed unable to process a single word. "Your mum," was all he managed to say, his voice quieter than he intended. The girl held out what she had been protecting so carefully. Her photograph. Ethan took it with trembling fingers. The impact was physical. It was as if someone had pressed a button and transported Ethan 8 years into the past. In the photo, he saw himself, younger, with longer hair, and most notably, smiling, hugging a woman with brown hair and blue eyes identical to the girl's, Rachel Bennett. The sunflower field in the background, the summer sun, that last weekend before... "Rachel," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. An unexpected tear slipped down his cheek, surprising him. Ethan hadn't cried in years. He had built walls around his emotions as solid as the skyscrapers he owned. But there on a busy Manhattan sidewalk, the past had caught him off guard. He turned his face away, trying to hide his emotion, but his fingers kept tracing the edges of the photo as though he could somehow reach that moment, frozen in time. "Are you crying?" asked the girl, tilting her head curiously. There was no judgment in her voice, just a sincere observation. Ethan quickly wiped his face with the back of his hand. "It's just city dust." He tried to smile, but felt another traitorous tear escape. "Your mom. What did you say her name was?" "My mom's name was Rachel," the girl confirmed, studying him with those eyes that seemed to see past the facade he'd built. "I'm Lily." Ethan looked from the photo to the girl several times. The resemblance was undeniable now that he knew what to look for. The shape of her eyes, the small upturned nose, even the way she tilted her head slightly to the side while waiting. Where is your mum?" he asked, though he already knew the answer, his voice still shaky. Lily lowered her gaze for the first time. "She went to heaven last month." "Cancer, that's what the doctor said." The sounds of the city rushed back all at once. An angry car horn, the chilly wind, the distant cry of a baby. Ethan realized he was standing in the middle of the sidewalk, holding a photo from his past and looking at what might be his future, tears still shining in his eyes. "Are you hungry?" he asked, surprising himself. Lily's face lit up with a hesitant smile. "A little." Ethan carefully tucked the photo into the inside pocket of his coat, close to his heart, and pointed to a small diner across the street. Its windows yellowed and its sign faded. It wasn't the kind of place he usually frequented. "We can talk in there," he offered, extending his hand instinctively. Lily looked at his hand for a moment, as if deciding whether she could trust him. Then, with the sudden resolve only children possess, she placed her small, cold hand in his. The diner was warm and smelled of fresh coffee and toast. A tired-looking waitress led them to a table at the back, away from the windows. Ethan could feel the outline of the photo through the fabric of his coat, as though the past were pressing against his chest. "What'll it be, honey?" the waitress asked Lily, ignoring Ethan completely. "Hot chocolate, please," Lily replied politely, "with marshmallows if you have them." "Coffee, black," Ethan added when the waitress finally looked at him. When they were alone again, the silence became heavy. Ethan didn't know where to begin. His mind was calculating possibilities, probabilities, consequences, just like it always did in business. But this was not a business deal. This was a child, possibly his child. "How did you find me?" he finally asked. Lily pulled a crumpled envelope from her coat pocket and placed it on the table. "Mommy left this for me. She said that when she wasn't here anymore, I should give it to Mrs. Margot and she'd help me find you." Ethan looked at the envelope. He recognized the handwriting instantly. Rachel had always had beautiful, almost artistic handwriting. He felt his throat tighten again, but this time he managed to hold back his emotion. "Who is Mrs. Margot?" "She's the neighbor who's taking care of me. She's nice, she makes carrot cake, but the apartment is small and smells like medicine." Their hot chocolate and coffee arrived. Lily blew on her drink before taking a sip, leaving a little chocolate mustache above her upper lip. Ethan felt a squeeze in his chest, something between tenderness and panic. "Your mum. Did she talk about me?" Lily nodded, licking the chocolate from her lips. "Sometimes she kept that photo in her room. When I asked and she said you were really important and busy, that you built big buildings where people work." Ethan took a sip of coffee, which was too strong and bitter. How had he become this man? This distant stranger who built buildings while Rachel raised a child alone. His child. "What else did she say?" he pressed, needing to know. Lily shrugged with the simplicity children have. "She said you had sad eyes, even when you smiled. They don't look sad in the picture." Ethan was at a loss for words. The observation hit him like a slap. Rachel had always been able to see right through him. For the next hour, Lily spoke with the disconcerting honesty of a child. She talked about school, about how she loved to draw, about the last few months with her mother's illness. There was no accusation in her voice, only facts, related with the simplicity of someone who hasn't learned to hide the truth yet. And Ethan listened. Perhaps for the first time in years, he truly listened to someone. The sky was already completely dark when they realized it was time to go. Ethan paid the bill and helped Lily with her coat. Something inside him didn't want this encounter to end, as though letting her go meant losing her forever. "How can I find you again?" he asked, bending down to her eye level. Lily looked at him as if the answer were obvious. "I'm with Mrs. Margot. Number 42 on Market Street." Ethan nodded, committing the address to memory. "Can I visit you tomorrow?" A smile lit up Lily's face, so much like Rachel's that it hurt. "Are you really going to?" "I will," he promised, surprised at the certainty in his own voice. When they said goodbye at the diner door, there were no hugs or grand gestures. Just a long look, a shy wave, and then Lily got into a cab Ethan hailed, where Mrs. Margot was already waiting, a stern-looking older woman with kind eyes. Ethan stayed on the sidewalk, watching the cab disappear into Manhattan traffic. In his pocket, the photo of a past he had never truly left behind. In his mind, the image of a future he never imagined possible. A silent connection began right there, in the middle of the city noise, in the space between strangers who might not be so strange after all. He took a deep breath, looked up at the skyscraper where he spent most of his days, and for the first time, wondered if there was something more important waiting for him somewhere else. Ethan's penthouse, on the 52nd floor of the tallest building he owned, was immersed in absolute silence. Only the occasional sound of ice in his whiskey glass broke the stillness. It was nearly midnight, but sleep was far from his thoughts. The photograph lay on the glass coffee table. Ethan stared at it as if it were an impossible puzzle. His trembling hands reached for the glass, raising it to his lips. The amber liquid burned his throat. But even that wasn't strong enough to chase away the thoughts consuming him. Rachel. 8 years had passed. 8 years since that summer in the sunflower field, when the world felt infinite and the possibilities limitless. He could still smell her, even after all that time, a mix of lavender and paint because she was always painting something. Rachel Bennett, the artist who had entered his life like a whirlwind and left without warning. Or was it he who left? Ethan picked up the photo again, his fingers tracing the outline of her face. Rachel's eyes sparkled in the photograph, the same eyes he had seen that day in a 5-year-old girl standing on the sidewalk. His daughter. The word still felt strange in his mind. His daughter. "Why didn't you ever look for me?" he whispered to the silent image. "Why didn't you tell me?" He stood up, walking to the window that took up the entire wall. The city below pulsed even at that hour. Millions of lives following their own paths, oblivious to one another. How long had he spent gazing at those lights, feeling separated from everything? As though he lived in a glass aquarium, watching the world without really being part of it. Ethan moved away from the window and returned to the sofa. The photo was waiting for him. The frozen smiles now felt like a wordless accusation. He remembered that day with painful clarity, the last weekend before the big investment, before the decision that would change his life, before telling Rachel he needed to focus on his career, that there was no room for distractions. Distractions, he muttered bitterly to himself, pouring another whiskey. That's what he had called their relationship back then, a distraction on the path to success. And Rachel, with the dignity that always defined her, simply nodded, packed her things, and left his apartment and his life without looking back. She never asked for anything, never begged for his attention or bargained for his time. Ethan had always admired that about her, her freedom, her self-sufficiency. Now looking back, he realized he had confused pride with indifference. "You were pregnant," he said to the photo, as though it might give him answers. "Carrying our child and you never said a word." His mind frantically did the math. If Lily was 5 now, Rachel must have been pregnant during that final week together, or she found out right after. And yet she chose silence. "Why didn't you look for me?" he asked again, more urgently this time. He imagined hundreds of different scenarios. Rachel trying to call his office and being blocked by his secretary. Rachel being rejected again. Rachel deciding it was better to raise the child alone than with a man obsessed with success and power. Each thought was a knife twisting deeper into his chest. The clock on the wall read 2 in the morning when Ethan finally set the photo aside. But Lily's image remained, those blue eyes identical to her mother's, brown hair falling in messy curls. The way she had held the photograph so carefully, as though she understood its value even before knowing its full meaning. "Lily," he said the name slowly, testing it on his tongue. His daughter had a name, a personality, an entire story he knew nothing about. It felt strange to think that while he had been busy building his financial empire, negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts and acquiring companies with the ease of someone buying a loaf of bread, some small part of him was growing somewhere else, learning to walk, talk, laugh without him. Ethan walked to his home office, turned on the computer, and typed Rachel's name. Nothing relevant appeared. She'd always been averse to social media. He tried again, this time including artist and painter. A few results came up, small exhibitions in alternative galleries, a brief period teaching art at an elementary school. The last record was from 2 years ago. After that, digital silence. Had she been sick all that time, fighting alone? The thought made his stomach churn. Ethan turned off the computer and went back to the living room. The photo still waited for him. He picked it up and took it into his bedroom, placing it carefully on the nightstand. He lay down on the king-size bed that always felt too big for just one person. The sky was already lightening when sleep finally claimed him. But even in his dreams, Ethan found no peace. He dreamt of sunflower fields turning into skyscrapers, of Rachel calling his name in endless corridors, of a blue-eyed girl holding a photograph and asking, "Will you stay this time?" Ethan woke up with a start. The sun was already high in the sky, and his personal assistant had called 3 times, probably worried about his absence from the morning board meeting. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't care. He took a quick shower, dressed in casual clothes, something he rarely did, and picked up the photograph. Today he would visit Lily as he had promised. He grabbed the keys to the car he almost never used and went down to the garage. As he drove through the city's busy streets, one thought wouldn't leave him. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt there was something important missing in his perfectly organized life, and it wasn't stocks and real estate or investments. It was a missing connection. Had a chance he'd let slip through his fingers like sand. Lily's image followed him, as vivid in his mind as the photo in his pocket, and with it, a growing certainty that his life until now, despite all the zeros in his bank account, was incomplete in a way no financial acquisition could fill. Number 42 on Market Street was an old brick building, the kind that stood bravely against the neighborhood's gentrification. The worn-out steps at the entrance told stories of generations who had passed through, and now, sitting on the third step, a little girl with messy braids was adding another story. Lily swung her legs, which didn't quite reach the ground. She wore denim overalls and a yellow sunflower-patterned shirt. A sketch pad lay across her lap. Her gaze alternated between the busy street and the paper where she scribbled with colored pencils. That was how Ethan found her the first time he kept his promise to visit. "You really came," Lily said, without looking up as if she already knew it was him before seeing him. "I promised," Ethan answered, stopping in front of her. He was carrying a paper bag in his hand. Inside was a set of professional colored pencils, the kind only real artists use. He had researched online to find the best brand before buying them. If Lily was Rachel's daughter, she surely had the same artistic talent. "I brought something for you," he said, handing her the bag. Lily took the gift and peeked inside. Her eyes went wide. "There are so many. There's even moss green and turquoise," she exclaimed, turning the box in her small hands. "Thank you." There were no hugs or over-the-top displays of affection, just a sincere thank you and a shy smile. Ethan felt a relief he hadn't realized he was seeking. "Want to take a walk?" he invited. Lily nodded, carefully placing her new pencils in the faded backpack she carried. "I'll tell Mrs. Margot." From that day on, visits became a routine, Tuesdays and Thursdays after work. Saturday mornings, Ethan rescheduled meetings, cancelled business dinners, changed an agenda that once seemed set in stone. His personal assistant, after the initial shock, now knew that nothing could be scheduled during those hours. Today was Saturday, and as always, Lily waited for him on the steps, sketchpad open, absorbed in coloring something. "What are you drawing?" Ethan asked, sitting beside her on the step, unconcerned about the dust that might stain his Italian suit. "The sky," Lily answered, showing him a drawing where blue blended with yellow and orange. "Mommy said the sky is never just blue. There are millions of hidden colors." Ethan looked up. The New York sky, glimpsed between buildings, was just a narrow band of pale blue, but maybe Rachel had been right as always. "Shall we go to the park today?" Lily asked, closing the sketchpad. That was another routine they had established, the park at the end of the street with wooden benches and old trees. "Sure," Ethan agreed. "We can stop at the ice cream shop afterward if you like." At the park, they found their usual bench, the third one to the right of the fountain. Lily opened her sketchpad again and started drawing, while Ethan watched people passing by. It was strange how his perception of the city had changed over the past few weeks. Before, everything seemed like an obstacle between one appointment and the next. Now he noticed small things, how the light filtered through the leaves, the sound of children playing, the slower weekend pace. "Why do you always wear black?" Lily asked suddenly, studying him with eyes that reminded him so much of Rachel. Ethan looked at his outfit. Even on Saturdays, he dressed formally. "I guess it's become a habit," he admitted, noticing for the first time how that might appear to a child. "Mommy wore all kinds of colors," Lily said, returning to her drawing. "She said each color has a different feeling, that you can talk without words, just with colors." Ethan smiled. "What does black say then?" Lily tilted her head, thinking, "That you're afraid people will see what's inside." The answer caught him off guard. How could a 5-year-old be so perceptive, so much like Rachel in her ability to see through appearances? "What are you drawing now?" he asked, changing the subject. "You," she replied simply, turning the sketchpad so he could see. On the paper, A man with dark hair and a black suit sat on a bench. The face was just a rough outline, not many details, but there was something about his posture, the angle of his shoulders, that perfectly captured his essence. "It's not very good yet," Lily said. "My mom taught me to draw people I know well. I'm still learning you." The sentence struck Ethan like a revelation. "I'm still learning you." Wasn't that exactly what he was doing too? Learning how to be a father, bit by bit, visit by visit. "Can I keep this drawing when you're done?" he asked, surprised at how much he wanted that piece of paper. Lily nodded, going back to her coloring. "I'll make a better one later, when I know you more." And so the weeks passed, Lily always waiting for him on the steps, the park, the drawings, simple conversations that somehow touched deep truths. At some point, without realizing it, Ethan started wearing navy blue instead of black. One day, he arrived with a red tie. "I like that color," Lily remarked, pointing to the tie. "Red is brave." On the third Saturday, she gave him a new drawing. In it, the man in the suit had a more defined face, eyes that looked far away, but with a slight smile on his lips. "It's getting better," she said. "Now I can draw your smile. Before, it was hard." "Do I smile so little?" Ethan asked. "That's not it. It's just that your smile is different from other people's. It starts in your eyes, not your mouth." Ethan placed the drawing in his work briefcase, next to multi-million-dollar contracts and acquisition reports. Somehow, that piece of paper felt more valuable than all the documents combined. One afternoon, as they were returning from the park, Lily held his hand for the first time. It was such a natural, simple gesture that Ethan almost tripped in surprise. Her small hand in his felt fragile, and at the same time, so strong in its trust. "You have big hands," Lily observed. "Mommy had small hands, but she used to say they were big enough to hold the whole world." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Your mom was an amazing woman." "Did you like her?" Lily asked, looking up at him with those penetrating eyes. "Very much," Ethan answered, surprised by his own honesty. "She was different from anyone I've ever met." "Why didn't you stay together?" The question hung in the air between them. Ethan searched for an answer a 5-year-old could understand, but that would also be true. "Sometimes people drift apart, even when they care about each other," he finally said. "I made mistakes. I thought other things were more important." Lily nodded, as though she perfectly understood. "Like money and work." "Exactly. Mommy said you were really busy building castles, so you forgot to look at the sky," Lily commented, without anger in her voice. But she never spoke with anger, just sadness. Her words weighed on Ethan for days. So busy building castles that he forgot to look at the sky. It was a perfect description of the man he had become, a man who built skyscrapers but forgot to live within them. One Thursday morning, Ethan decided he needed to know more. There were so many unanswered questions, so many gaps to fill. He arrived at number 42 on Market Street earlier than usual, when he knew Lily would still be at school. Margot answered the door on the third knock, as though she had been waiting for him. "Mr. Cole," she said with a nod, "Lily's at school." "I know," Ethan replied. "I actually came to talk to you if you have a moment." Margot studied him for a few seconds, as if weighing his intentions, then opened the door wider. "Come in. The coffee's fresh." The apartment was small but cozy, old furniture, well cared for, framed photos in wooden stands, a smell of coffee and cinnamon. On the living room wall, several colorful drawings were taped up, all signed by Lily in hesitant handwriting. "She's talented," Ethan remarked, observing the drawings. "Like her mother," Margot agreed, pouring coffee into delicate porcelain cups. "Rachel painted as naturally as breathing. It just flowed out of her." Ethan accepted the cup, feeling its warmth through the thin porcelain. "Thank you for taking care of Lily all this time. I didn't even know that you had a daughter," Margot completed, sitting in the armchair across from him. "Rachel made that choice. It wasn't my place to question her. Why did she never come to me?" The question escaped before he could hold it back, the same one that had tormented him for weeks. Margot took a sip of coffee before answering. Rachel had her own way of seeing the world. When she found out she was pregnant, You had already made it clear where your priorities lay. I would have helped financially, Ethan protested, immediately feeling foolish as he said it. That's exactly why she didn't come to you, Margot said with a sad smile. Rachel didn't want your money, Mr. Cole. She wanted your presence. And if you couldn't give that willingly, she wouldn't ask. Her words hit Ethan like a punch. Of course, Rachel had never been one to ask someone for something they didn't want to give. Her independence had been part of what made her so special, and, at times, so frustrating. She never asked for anything, Margot continued, glancing at a photo on the wall. Rachel and Lily both smiling at the camera, with the same dimples. She only left instructions so that, when the time came, Lily would seek you out. Why? Ethan asked, confused. Why wait so long? Margot studied him again with those eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface. Because she wanted you to come by choice, not by obligation. Rachel believed some things only have value when they're given freely. Ethan looked around the cozy apartment, at the drawings on the wall, at the simple but dignified life Rachel had built for herself and their daughter, without his money, without his name, without asking for anything in return. How long was she sick? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The diagnosis came 2 years ago. She fought bravely, as she did with everything in life. 2 years. 2 years of treatments, pain and uncertainty. And still, Rachel had chosen not to seek him out. Not out of pride, he realized, but out of principle. Why didn't she come to me when she found out she was sick? He asked, a hint of frustration slipping into his voice. I could have helped. I could have gotten the best treatments, the best doctors. She had the best doctors she could, Margot replied calmly. She sold almost all of her paintings to pay for the treatments. What she had was too aggressive, Mr. Cole. Not all the money in the world would have changed the outcome. Ethan felt the weight of those words. Even with all his wealth, he couldn't have saved Rachel. It was a harsh truth for a man used to solving problems with financial power. Margot stood up and walked to a small desk near the window. She opened the drawer and took out an envelope, yellowed with age. Rachel wrote this for you, she said, handing him the envelope. She asked me to give it to you if one day you came, by your own choice. Ethan looked at the envelope. His name was written on the front, in Rachel's unmistakable handwriting. He felt his heart speed up. When did she write this? He asked, unable to take it yet. During her last week, Margot answered softly, when she knew there were no more treatments to try. Ethan finally reached out and took the envelope. It was light, but somehow it felt like it contained the weight of the world. Thank you, he said, placing it carefully inside his jacket pocket, for everything you did for them. Margot nodded, a gentle smile on her lips. Lily is a special child, a perfect blend of her mother's courage and her father's determination. Her words stayed with him as he left the apartment. The midday sun lit up the street, bringing forth colors Ethan had never noticed before. The envelope in his pocket seemed to pulse with its own energy, Rachel's final words to him. What had she written? Ethan walked to the park, sitting down on the bench he and Lily favored. He took the envelope from his pocket and stared at it. He wasn't ready to open it. Not here. Not now. Instead, he thought about Lily and the drawings she made of him. I'm still learning you, she had said. And he was learning too, learning to be a father, to be present, to see the hidden colors in the sky. Bit by bit, visit by visit, a bond was growing between them, something no fortune could buy or replace. He put the envelope away and looked at his watch. He still had a few hours before Lily got out of school. This time he would be the one waiting on the steps. The thought made him smile. A smile that, as Lily had noted, started in his eyes. Ethan's penthouse had never felt so quiet. The envelope sat on the coffee table for hours while he paced back and forth, preparing himself for whatever was inside. His name, in Rachel's handwriting, seemed to glow under the soft lamplight. When he finally mustered the courage, Ethan sat on the sofa and picked up the envelope. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it with care, afraid of damaging its contents. Inside, he found a few sheets of light blue stationery, Rachel's favorite color. He could still detect the faint smell of lavender on the pages, bringing back memories he had locked away. He took a deep breath and began to read. Ethan, if you're reading these words, two things have happened. I've left this world, and you chose to meet our daughter. I'm not sure which one is harder to believe. First, about Lily. She has your eyes, you know? Not the color, which is like mine, but the way she looks, like she's always measuring distances, weighing possibilities. She also has your stubbornness, although I never told her that. Some things are in the blood, I suppose. You're probably wondering why I never told you about her, why I never demanded that you take responsibility, why I didn't at least seek financial support, which I know you would have provided without hesitation. The truth, Ethan, is both simple and complicated. When I found out I was pregnant, you had already made it clear there was no room in your life for distractions. That's what you called our relationship that last night, remember? I could have told you then. I could have used the pregnancy like an anchor to hold you, but what kind of start to a family would that have been? So I made a decision many would call crazy. I decided my daughter would only meet her father if he chose to meet her, of his own free will, not out of obligation or guilt. Maybe it was selfish of me, maybe just naive idealism, but I never regretted it. If you're reading this, maybe you chose to stay. Maybe you looked into her eyes and saw something more important than empires and fortunes. I hope so, because Lily deserves that. She deserves a father who chooses her freely, every day. As for me, don't blame yourself. I lived exactly how I wanted, painting, loving our daughter, teaching her to see beauty in everything. I've had more happiness in these years than many have in a lifetime. Not for a second did I wish for a different life. The cancer came without warning, as it usually does. By the time we discovered it, it had spread too far. I sold my paintings, fought as hard as I could, but there are battles we can't win. My only regret is leaving Lily so soon. But if you're reading this, I know she won't be alone. Some would say I should forgive you, Ethan. The truth is, there was never anything to forgive. Each of us followed the path we believed was right. Life gave me Lily. Life gave you success. Now, maybe life is offering the two of you a chance I won't have, the chance to be a family. Take care of her, Ethan. Not with your money or your name, but with your time, your presence. Teach her to build castles, but also to look at the sky. And maybe, if you're lucky, she'll teach you to see the hidden colors everywhere, like I always tried to show you. With love, for all that was and all that could have been, Rachel. The last word blurred as a tear fell onto the paper. Ethan hadn't even realized he was crying until several drops stained the letter. A sob escaped his throat, then another, until he was crying openly. For the first time since childhood, he wept for Rachel, for the life they hadn't shared, for the lost time. He wept for Lily, who had grown up without a father and faced losing her mother at such a young age. And he wept for himself, for the man he could have been, for the father he never imagined he would be. When his tears finally subsided, Ethan felt strangely light, as though a weight he'd been carrying for years, unbeknownst to him, had been lifted. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in the nightstand drawer. He walked to the window of his penthouse, looking out at the city he had conquered. Skyscrapers, companies, bank accounts, the castles he'd built while forgetting to look at the sky. But now, gazing at the horizon, Ethan made his decision. He wanted to stay, not just visit Lily a few times a week, not just provide financial support. He wanted to be a father. A real father, present, available. He wanted to try to build the family Rachel had envisioned in her letter. It was a choice that would completely change his life. But for the first time in many years, Ethan didn't calculate risks or weigh consequences. He simply knew with a certainty he'd never felt before that it was the right path. The park was dressed in its best fall colors. Golden and red leaves danced in the air before landing on the ground, creating a multicolored carpet that rustled underfoot. The sky was exceptionally blue for an October day in New York. As though nature conspired to make the moment perfect, Ethan arrived early. He was wearing jeans and a dark blue sweater, the first time Lily would see him without a suit. He had thought long and hard about how to make his invitation, how to explain to a 5-year-old that he wanted to be a permanent part of her life, that he wanted to be her father, not just an occasional visitor. He sat on their usual bench and waited. 20 minutes later, he saw Lily and Margot walking toward him. Lily ran ahead, her red scarf trailing behind her like a little flag. "You came!" Lily exclaimed when she reached him, her face lit by a smile. "I always do, don't I?" Ethan answered, smiling back. Margot approached more slowly. "I'll be at the cafe on the other side of the park," she informed them. "You can meet me there when you're done." Ethan nodded, grateful for the trust she was showing. It was the first time Margot was leaving Lily completely alone with him. "I brought something for you," Ethan said as Margot walked away. He took out a small paper-wrapped package from his pocket. Lily opened it carefully, preserving the wrapping paper. It was a little disposable camera, the kind kids can use without worrying about breaking it. "It's for you to capture the things you find beautiful today," Ethan explained. "Like your mom did with her drawings." Lily's eyes sparkled. "Can I take as many pictures as I want?" "There are 27 shots in there. Use them however you like." Their walk began on the usual path, but Lily soon led him along side trails Ethan hadn't known existed. She knew the park like someone who had visited hundreds of times, and she probably had, with Rachel. They stopped every few steps so Lily could photograph something. A squirrel carrying a nut, a particularly red leaf, their shadows reflected in a puddle. Ethan watched, fascinated by how she saw the world, the small details most adults would ignore. "Look!" Lily exclaimed, pointing upward. "A cardinal!" Ethan followed her gaze. On the lowest branch of an oak tree, a bright red bird watched them curiously. "How do you know it's a cardinal?" he asked. "Mommy taught me all the birds in the park," Lily answered, snapping another photo. "She said they're messengers." "Messengers of what?" Lily shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "Important things. Things we need to remember." They continued until they reached the small lake in the center of the park. The sun reflected on the water, creating golden sparkles on the surface. A few ducks swam calmly, ignoring the visitors. Lily crouched down and picked up a handful of dried leaves. With a quick motion, she tossed them into the air, laughing as they fluttered down in all directions before landing on the water. "Your turn," she challenged, looking at Ethan. He hesitated for only a second before bending down to grab his own handful of leaves. As he threw them, he felt a kind of freedom he hadn't experienced since Rachel. It was as if the rules he'd created for himself, decorum, restraint, formality, didn't apply in that moment, with that child. Soon they were having a leaf-throwing battle, tossing them at each other and laughing like there was no tomorrow. Ethan didn't even notice when his expensive sweater got covered in bits of leaves and a little mud. Nor did he care when an elderly woman passed by, shaking her head disapprovingly at the commotion. Exhausted, they sat by the water's edge, watching the ripples on the lake. "Did you know leaves turn into food for the fish when they fall in the water?" Lily asked, taking a photo of the lake's surface. "No," Ethan admitted. "How do you know that?" "I learned it at school," she said proudly. "The teacher said everything in nature has a purpose, even things that look dead, like dried leaves." The profound simplicity of her observation struck Ethan. He thought about Rachel, about how she was now nourishing new lives through Lily, through the lessons, values, and love she had planted. "Your mum would be proud of how smart you are," he said, surprised at the emotion in his own voice. Lily looked at him with those bright blue eyes. "You really think so?" "I'm sure." The silence that followed was comfortable, something that rarely happened between Ethan and other people. He'd always felt the need to fill empty spaces with words, usually about business or accomplishments. With Lily, silence felt like part of the conversation. "Lily," he began, finally gathering courage, "what do you think about seeing my home?" She looked at him curiously. "Is it far from here?" "A bit. It's in another part of town, in a tall building overlooking Central Park." Lily pondered that. "Are there other people living there?" "No, it's just me," Ethan answered. "It's a big place for one person." The girl nodded, as if confirming something she already suspected. "Do you feel lonely there?" The question was simple, but hit Ethan unexpectedly hard. Lonely. Yes, he had been lonely for so long he barely noticed anymore. "Yes," he admitted, "I do feel lonely." Lily tossed another leaf onto the water, watching it float away slowly. That's sad. Ethan smiled at her candor. Yes, sometimes it is. He took a deep breath before continuing. Actually, Lily, my home could be yours too if you want. The girl's eyes went wide as she turned fully to face him. What do you mean? I'm thinking you could live with me, Ethan explained, choosing his words carefully. Maybe at first just a few days a week. Then, if you like it, we could make it every day. Live with you, Lily repeated, as though testing how the words sounded. But what about Mrs. Margot? She can visit whenever she wants, and you can visit her too, Ethan assured her. But you'd have your own space at my place. A spot that's just yours. Lily seemed to be processing the idea, her brow furrowed in concentration. Is there a room just for me? Ethan smiled, relieved by her practical question. There is, with colorful sheets. A slow smile began to form on Lily's face. It wasn't exuberant or explosive, but something deeper, like a smile that starts in the eyes and spreads gradually to the lips. Can I bring my drawings? All of them. And my books. Sure. And the picture frame with Mommy's photo. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. Especially the photo of your mum. Lily looked at the lake, then at the sky as if searching the clouds for an answer. Finally, she turned back to Ethan. I think I'd like a room with colorful sheets, she said simply. For Ethan, it was more than a casual acceptance. It was the first step towards something he never thought he wanted. To belong to someone, to put down roots, to build a home. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. They continued walking through the park, but now the conversation revolved around plans. What color Lily would like for the walls of her room, where she would put her collection of colorful rocks, whether they'd need a bigger bookshelf for her books. When they found Margot in the cafe, Ethan explained the proposal. She listened attentively, asking practical questions about school, routine, adaptation. She didn't seem surprised, as if on some level she'd been expecting this moment. Rachel would have approved, Margot finally said with a small nod, but take it slowly. One step at a time. They agreed that Lily would spend the upcoming weekend at Ethan's, an experimental visit to see how she'd feel in her new environment. If all went well, they'd start planning a more permanent arrangement. The following Saturday arrived faster than Ethan expected. He spent the entire week preparing the guest room, turning it into a space fit for a 5-year-old. He bought sheets with stars and planets, a lamp that projected constellations on the ceiling, a small bookshelf. He wasn't sure he was doing it right, but for the first time in years, he genuinely cared about getting it right. When he went to pick Lily up, she was waiting on the steps with a small purple backpack and her sketchpad in her hand. She looked both excited and determined. Ready for our adventure? Ethan asked, extending his hand. Lily nodded, gripping his hand firmly. Ready. They filled the car ride to his apartment with Lily's observations about the streets, the buildings, and the people passing by. She seemed to absorb the city with insatiable curiosity. When they finally arrived at Ethan's building, with its imposing facade and uniformed doormen, Lily seemed momentarily intimidated. She clung to Ethan's hand more tightly as they stepped into the private elevator that would take them directly to his penthouse. It's really high, she murmured, eyeing the elevator panel as the numbers climbed. Don't worry, Ethan assured her. The higher we go, the better the view. The elevator doors opened straight into the living room, a wide space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. The decor was minimalist, mostly in shades of grey and black, accented by a few pieces of modern art on the walls. Lily let go of Ethan's hand and took a few hesitant steps into the apartment, her eyes wide with wonder. Wow, was all she said. Ethan watched, seeing his home through her eyes for the first time. Yes, it was impressive, but it also felt cold and impersonal. There were no photos, no personal objects, no signs that anyone truly lived there. It was more a statement of status than a home. Come on, I want to show you your room, he said, leading her down a hallway. He opened a door and let Lily walk in first. The guest room hadn't undergone a radical transformation. Its walls were still white, the furniture modern and minimalist. But the colorful bedspread, the constellation lamp, the little bookshelf, and most importantly, the empty wall space waiting to be filled with drawings, all spoke of possibility. Lily walked slowly into the room, spinning in the center to take it all in. She touched the sheets, tried sitting on the bed, opened the empty drawers of the dresser. "All this is just mine?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "It's all yours," Ethan confirmed, leaning against the doorframe. "We can paint the walls any color you want, and add more things little by little." To his surprise, Lily ran toward him and hugged him. The first real hug they shared. It was strong, almost desperate, as though she were clinging to a promise. Ethan felt something inside him break, perhaps the last wall he had built around his heart. He knelt down and returned her embrace, feeling her small body tremble softly against his. "It's okay," he murmured, stroking her hair. "This is your place now." The rest of the day passed in exploring the apartment. Lily wanted to see everything: the huge kitchen he rarely used, the office where he worked, the balcony overlooking the park. In each space, she gave honest commentary and suggestions for improvement. "It needs more color here," she said about the living room, "and pictures of happy people, not these weird blobs." Ethan couldn't help but laugh. The weird blobs were abstract paintings he had paid small fortunes for, chosen by a renowned interior decorator. "Maybe you can help me pick better things," he suggested. That evening, after pizza and ice cream, a dinner Ethan would never have had on his own, came the moment he secretly dreaded: bedtime. He didn't really know what kind of routine a 5-year-old needed. What had Rachel done? To his relief, Lily seemed to know exactly what she wanted. She asked to take a bath, then changed into her favorite pajamas, blue with little moons printed on it. She took a thin book from her backpack and handed it to Ethan. "Mommy always read to me before bed," she explained. Ethan looked at the worn book, "Where the Wild Things Are." He sat on the edge of the bed and began reading, trying to give different voices to each character, as he suspected Rachel would do. Lily listened attentively, her eyes already heavy with sleep. When the story ended, she surprised him with a request. "Could you leave the door a little open? And the hallway light on?" "Of course," Ethan agreed, understanding the unspoken fear of waking up in a strange place. In the dark, he tucked the covers around her, a gesture he had never done before, but that felt strangely natural. "Good night, Ethan," Lily said, her voice already thick with sleep. "Good night, Lily," he replied, resisting the urge to kiss her forehead. Maybe it was too soon for that. He left the room, leaving the door slightly ajar as promised. In the hallway, he stopped and looked back at the small figure curled beneath the bright covers. His apartment had always been a place to sleep, work, and occasionally entertain clients. It had never been a home, just a trophy address, another acquisition. But that night, with one door left ajar and the soft sound of a child's breathing, for the first time, it felt like a home. Dawn had barely touched the apartment windows when Ethan was awakened by a noise in the kitchen. For a moment, his heart raced. There were never unexpected sounds in his home. Then he remembered Lily. The reality of not being alone washed over him like a warm wave. He quickly got up and walked to the kitchen, still in his pajamas. Another new habit, since he used to sleep in workout clothes to optimize his morning routine. He found Lily standing on a stool she had dragged to the counter, trying to reach the fridge. She wore her moon pajamas, and her hair was a complete mess. "Good morning," Ethan said, suppressing a smile at her determination. Lily turned, startled, then smiled. "I wanted to surprise you with breakfast, but there's nothing in the fridge." Ethan stepped closer, checking the almost empty fridge. It held only basics: milk, eggs, butter. He usually ate at the office or had takeout from nearby restaurants. "I guess we need to go shopping," he admitted. "But we've got enough to make pancakes. Do you like pancakes?" Lily's eyes shone. "Mommy made them on Sundays with honey and strawberries." "I don't have strawberries," he said, checking the fridge again. "But we do have honey." "Can we make them together?" Lily asked, stepping down from the stool to stand beside him. The idea of cooking with a 5-year-old had never crossed Ethan's mind. His kitchen was pristine, equipped with expensive appliances he seldom used. But Lily's hopeful look was irresistible. "Sure," he answered, surprising himself. "You can be my official pancake assistant." What followed was a small culinary disaster. Ethan discovered making pancakes was far more complicated than it looked. The first batch was raw inside and burned outside. The second stuck to the pan and turned into a shapeless mass. The third was passable, but when he tried to flip it, half ended up on the floor. Much to his surprise, Lily found it all hilarious. She laughed at every ruined pancake, applauded the few that turned out nearly okay, and didn't mind the growing mess. "Have you never made pancakes before?" she asked, watching Ethan struggle with the spatula. "Honestly, no," he admitted. "I usually have breakfast at the company." Lily seemed to consider that deeply. "But then you miss the best part of the day?" Ethan reflected on that simple statement as he tried flipping yet another pancake. The best part of the day. Could that be what he'd been missing all these years, focused solely on building his empire? By the time they were done, they had managed 6 decent pancakes and burned at least 6 others. The kitchen looked like a war zone, flour coating the counter, batter splatters on the floor, but sitting at the kitchen table, covering the uneven pancakes with honey, Ethan felt a strange satisfaction no successful negotiation had ever given him. "They're not that bad," Lily declared, chewing enthusiastically. "Next time, they'll be better." Next time. The phrase hung in the air like a silent promise of continuity, of belonging. That awkward breakfast was the start of something new in their lives. In the days that followed, as Lily alternated between staying with Ethan and staying with Margot, they began to establish their own traditions, their little rituals. Ethan discovered Lily loved fruit cut into fun shapes. He bought special cutters and tried every morning to turn apples into stars and watermelon into hearts. At first, his attempts were clumsy, but he got better every day. After lunch, rain or shine, they'd take a short walk. Sometimes just around the block, sometimes to the nearest park. Lily always brought her sketch pad, and at some point they would stop so she could capture something that caught her attention. A bird, a flower, an interesting building. At night, after dinner, they read together. Ethan had bought a whole shelf of children's books, but Lily had her favorites, stories she asked to hear again and again. He learned to give each character a distinct voice, to pause dramatically at the right moments, to patiently answer the same questions about the story every time. The most surprising thing for Ethan was how these simple rituals quickly became the center of his life. Important meetings were rescheduled so they wouldn't interfere with story time. Business calls were cut short so he could make it home in time to prepare breakfast. For the first time, his time was arranged around a person, not a professional goal. Lily drew almost every day, sometimes at the park, sometimes at Ethan's dining room table, her colored pencils spread across the glass surface. He had bought a special folder to store her work, organizing them carefully by date. On a rainy Saturday, while Lily drew and Ethan answered emails on the couch next to her, he noticed that her picture featured 2 people, a little girl with brown hair and a taller woman with the same color. "Is that you and your mom?" he asked softly. Lily nodded without looking up. "We're in our old apartment. Mommy's painting and I'm drawing." Ethan observed the details, the woman at an easel, the child on the floor with papers all around, a depiction of moments he would never see, of a life he had missed the chance to share. "Can I ask you something?" he said hesitantly. "You never draw me in these pictures with you and your mum." Lily stopped coloring and looked at him with those serious eyes that seemed to see beyond appearances. "When I know how to draw you properly," she answered simply, then went back to her work. Her response stayed with Ethan all day. It wasn't rejection, he realized. It was honesty. Lily was still getting to know him, learning his outlines, discovering who he really was. Earning a place in her drawings, alongside her and Rachel, was something to be achieved, not automatically granted. And at that moment, with the rain tapping gently at the windows and Lily humming softly while she drew, Ethan understood that he was being included, little by little, in her world, not because of his money or his name, but because of time spent together. Burned pancakes, fruit cut into stars, bedtime stories. Those small rituals were building something no corporate empire could ever replicate, a place both of them could finally call home. Ethan knew something was wrong the moment Lily walked into the apartment after school. Normally, she would bounce through the hallway, toss her backpack dramatically onto the couch, and immediately start talking about her day. But this time, she walked slowly, her shoulders slumped, her backpack dragging on the floor. "Everything okay, kiddo?" he asked, bending down to her level. Lily just nodded, but her eyes were dull, missing their usual sparkle. Ethan reached out to feel her forehead instinctively and pulled back, alarmed. It was burning. "Do you feel sick?" he insisted, trying to stay calm. "A little tired," she finally admitted. "And cold. It's cold in here." It was the middle of summer, and the apartment was perfectly comfortable. A wave of panic washed over Ethan. Fever. Lily had a fever, and he had no idea what to do. Let's check your temperature," he said, remembering that was the standard procedure. He searched frantically around the apartment until he found a digital thermometer he didn't even know he had. When the number blinked on the display, 102.5 degrees Celsius, Ethan felt his blood run cold. Was it too high? Was it an emergency? Should he rush her to the hospital? He took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. He couldn't panic. Lily needed him. "Let's get you out of that uniform and into something more comfortable," he suggested, guiding her gently to her room. While Lily changed in the bathroom, Ethan Googled childhood fever on his phone. The medical articles calmed him a bit. 102.5 degrees Celsius was considered high, but not necessarily an emergency unless there were other concerning symptoms. He called Margot, who listened patiently to his fears with motherly composure. "It's probably just a cold," she reassured him. "Give her a lukewarm bath, not cold water, some children's fever reducer. You can find it at the pharmacy on the corner, plenty of fluids, and keep an eye on her." "What if it gets worse?" Ethan asked, his fear evident in his voice. "Then take her to the hospital," Margot answered simply. "But children get sick, Mr. Cole. It's part of growing up." Margot's practical simplicity grounded him. When Lily emerged from the bathroom wearing her favorite moon pajamas, Ethan had a plan. "Let's give you a nice warm bath so you'll feel better," he said, leading her to the main bathroom. As she sat in the tub, Ethan adjusted the water temperature and improvised a game, gently pouring warm water over her shoulders with a cup. "This is a magical waterfall," he invented, surprised by his own sudden creativity. "Every drop carries away a bit of what's making you feel bad." Lily gave a faint smile, her eyes still feverish but clearly more relaxed. After the bath, he wrapped her in a large soft towel and carried her to bed. He gave her the medicine he had hurriedly bought at the pharmacy, following the dosing instructions meticulously, measuring the liquid 3 times to be sure. "It tastes like strawberry," Lily commented after swallowing the medicine. "Not so bad," Ethan smiled, relieved for that small moment of normalcy. "Want me to read you a story?" Lily shook her head. "Can you make one up?" The request caught him off guard. Reading stories was easy. The words were already there. Inventing one from scratch was uncharted territory. "I can try," he answered, hesitant. He sat on the edge of the bed, tucking the blankets around Lily. She looked so small and vulnerable among the pillows, her eyes still glazed with fever, but fixed on him. "Once upon a time," Ethan began, with the classic opener while his mind raced for a story, "there was a little star that lived in the sky." The tale emerged spontaneously, surprising even him. He spoke of a lonely star that shone brighter than the others, but felt isolated because it was so far away. One day, it decided to become a comet so it could travel the sky and make friends. On its journey, it met planets, other stars, and even humans who made wishes upon it. Lily listened attentively, her eyes growing heavier. By the time Ethan got to the part where the star comet found a home among a constellation that welcomed it like family, she was nearly asleep. "The end," he whispered, seeing her eyes finally close. He remained there for a long time, watching her breathing. It was still a bit fast and her face was flushed with fever. Almost without thinking, he pulled a small armchair from the corner of the room next to her bed and sat down, determined to keep watch through the night. The hours dragged on. Every 20 minutes, Ethan checked Lily's temperature, relieved to see it wasn't climbing. By now, he had memorized every fact about childhood fevers he could find online, and he knew the most important thing was to keep her hydrated and comfortable. Around 3 in the morning, Lily stirred restlessly, mumbling words he couldn't make out. Ethan held her hand, speaking quietly to soothe her. She opened her eyes, still bright with fever, but lucid. "Ethan," she called, her voice small in the darkness. "I'm here," he answered immediately. Lily looked at him for a long moment, a serious expression on her childlike face. "Are you going to leave?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. She wasn't asking about tonight's vigil, but something bigger, deeper. A question born of every child's fear of being left behind, or perhaps the recent memory of losing her mother. "Never again," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the knot in his throat. "I'm never leaving you again, Lily." A small smile appeared on her lips. Without another word, she gripped his hand tighter and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing became deeper and more regular. Ethan stayed there, his hand in hers, even when his fingers began to tingle from the awkward position. He watched the hours tick by, the dark sky gradually giving way to grayish blue. At some point, he dozed off, his head resting on the edge of Lily's bed, still holding her hand. He woke to find sunlight peeking through the curtains. Instantly, he looked at Lily and felt immense relief. Her cheeks weren't so red anymore, and when he touched her forehead, it felt cooler. Lily opened her eyes slowly, blinking until she focused on him. "Good morning," she said, her voice still a bit hoarse but much stronger than the night before. "Good morning," Ethan replied, smiling. "How do you feel?" "Better," she said, sitting up in bed. "I'm hungry," Ethan laughed, relief making him feel light. "That's a great sign. I'll fix you something to eat. How about pancakes?" "With strawberries?" Lily asked, her eyes hopeful where they had been dull before. "With all the strawberries you want," he promised, standing up from the armchair where he'd spent the night. His muscles protested, numb from the uncomfortable position, but he hardly noticed. As he walked to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, Ethan realized something had changed between them during that night of fever. A bond had solidified, strengthened by shared fear and a promise made in the dark. "I'm never leaving you again." It wasn't just something he'd said to calm a feverish child. It was a promise he'd made to himself, to Lily, and perhaps, in some way, to Rachel as well. For the first time in his life, Ethan Cole was absolutely certain he was in the right place, doing the right thing with the right person. There was nowhere else in the world he should be at that moment, but making pancakes with strawberries for his daughter. Weeks had passed since the feverish night. Fall was slowly giving way to winter, and the windows of Ethan's apartment now framed a central park, shedding its golden leaves, revealing bare branches against a sky that grew grayer by the day. Life found its rhythm. Lily now lived permanently with Ethan, though they visited Margot often. Their routine had the simplicity and predictability children need. School in the morning, afternoons with Ethan or at Margot's if he had unavoidable meetings, dinners together, and bedtime stories. The penthouse had transformed as well. What was once a minimalist space, almost sterile in its cold elegance, now displayed the unmistakable signs of a child's presence. Colorful books on the living room shelf, a pair of small sneakers left near the couch, drawings stuck to the refrigerator door with magnets. One Thursday afternoon, Ethan came home early from the office. He had closed an important deal, the kind that months ago would have kept him at work until late to celebrate with his team. Now, his first reaction to success was wanting to share it with Lily. He found her in the living room, lying on her stomach on the rug, completely absorbed in her drawing. She didn't even hear him come in, so focused was she on her art. Ethan paused for a moment, watching her. The way she furrowed her brow when choosing a color, how she bit her lower lip when working on small details. Gestures so reminiscent of Rachel that it sometimes hurt to look at her. "I'm home," he finally announced. Lily lifted her head, startled, then quickly turned the drawing face down. "You're early," she exclaimed, a mix of happiness and was that nervousness. "I finished what I needed to," Ethan said, intrigued by her reaction. "What are you drawing?" "Nothing," Lily replied too quickly. Then, seeing Ethan's confused look, she added, "I mean, it's a surprise. It's not ready yet." "A surprise for me?" he asked, sitting on the couch. Lily nodded, still guarding the drawing. I just need a bit more. Can you watch TV while I finish? Ethan smiled, turning on a documentary about marine life that he knew she liked. He pretended to watch, but in reality, he kept an eye on Lily, who went back to her work with renewed urgency. She alternated between drawing and glancing at him, as though capturing something she was only now noticing. After about 20 minutes, Lily finally stood up, clutching the drawing to her chest. "Done," she announced, looking both proud and apprehensive. "But you have to close your eyes first." Ethan obeyed, feeling a flutter in his stomach that didn't match his usual business world confidence. It was the same feeling he got as a child, waiting to receive a birthday present. He felt the paper being placed in his hands. "Okay, you can open them now," Lily said in a low voice, almost a whisper. Ethan opened his eyes and looked at the drawing. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. On the paper, 3 stick figures held hands in a green field under a bright blue sky. On the left, a female figure with long brown hair and a colorful dress, unmistakably Rachel. In the middle, a smaller figure with similar brown hair and a red dress, Lily. And on the right, a taller male figure wearing what appeared to be a blue suit instead of black, with a slight smile, clearly him. But what really made his heart stop was the word written above the male figure in big, uneven letters, some reversed in the way only 5-year-olds can write. "Daddy, Daddy, Father." "That's you," Lily explained unnecessarily, watching his reaction closely. "Now I know how to draw you right." Ethan tried to speak, but words stuck in his throat. He felt his eyes burn, his vision blur with tears. "You don't like it?" Lily asked, alarmed by his reaction. "No," Ethan quickly replied, blinking away tears. "I mean, yes, I love it. It's the best drawing I've ever seen." "You're crying," Lily pointed out, clearly confused. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy," he explained, carefully placing the drawing on the couch so he could open his arms. "Can I give you a hug?" Lily nodded and stepped into his embrace. Ethan held her tight, feeling the strength and fragility of that small body. It was surreal to think that this child, this complete person with thoughts, feelings, and needs, was part of him. That despite all his mistakes, somehow he had done something right. "Is it okay I wrote Daddy?" Lily asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Margot said I should ask first, but I wanted it to be a surprise." Ethan pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "It's more than okay, it's perfect. So now you're my dad, for real?" The question was simple, direct, the way only children can be. Ethan felt the weight and the lightness of it all at once. "I've always been your dad," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "I just didn't know it until I met you, and now that I do, I want to be your dad forever." "If you want me to," Lily's smile said it all. She stepped away from the hug and picked up the drawing again. "Can we put it in a frame? Mommy always framed my special drawings." "Of course we can," Ethan said. "I think I have a frame around here." He got up and went to his office, where he knew there were a few spare frames. He found a simple one made of dark wood, which seemed perfect. He returned to the living room, where Lily waited eagerly. Together, they placed the drawing inside the frame. It wasn't a simple process. The paper needed to be adjusted multiple times, and one of the frame's clips broke, making them laugh in shared frustration. But finally, they succeeded. "Where should we put it?" Lily asked, holding the framed drawing reverently. Ethan thought for a moment. There were more obvious places: the living room wall, the bookcase, even his office. But none felt right. "On my nightstand," he decided at last. "So it's the first thing I see when I wake up and the last before I go to sleep." Lily's smile lit up her whole face at that. They walked together to Ethan's bedroom, where Lily rarely went. Not by any rule, but simply because there wasn't much for her to do there. It was a functional space, not welcoming. They placed the frame on the dark wood nightstand. The bright, colorful drawing contrasted dramatically with the sober decor, like a portal to another world. Lily's world, brimming with color and possibility. "Perfect," Ethan declared, admiring the effect. Lily agreed solemnly. Then, as though struck by a sudden idea, she asked, "Can we do something special today, to celebrate?" "Celebrate what?" Ethan asked, curious. Lily shrugged. suddenly shy. Being an official family with a drawing and everything. Ethan felt his heart swell. That's the best idea I've heard. What would you like to do? They settled on an indoor picnic in the living room, since the cold weather wouldn't allow for one outside. They moved the furniture aside, spread a blanket on the floor, and prepared sandwiches, fruit, and hot chocolate together. Ethan even opened a bottle of non-alcoholic cider, served in crystal glasses for a more formal touch, as he explained to Lily. Midway through their meal, as Lily eagerly recounted a story from school, Ethan had an idea. You know what we could do? He interrupted, excited. A memory box to keep special moments like this one. Lily paused, intrigued. Like a treasure. Exactly like a treasure, Ethan agreed. We can put in little things that remind us of important moments. Things that might seem ordinary to others, but are special to us. Like the seashell I found when we went to the beach, Lily asked, referring to the previous weekend's trip to the coast, despite the cold. Perfect, Ethan said, and we could also put a leaf from that day in the park, remember? When we threw leaves at each other. Lily's eyes glowed with excitement. And a napkin from the diner where we first met. You remember that? Ethan asked, surprised. Lily nodded. It was the first time I had hot chocolate with you. I was nervous. I was nervous too, Ethan confessed. More nervous than in any business meeting. They quickly finished their indoor picnic, eager to start their new project. Ethan retrieved a carved wooden box he had bought during a trip to Japan years ago. An elegant, inexpensive item he had only ever seen as a decorative piece, never imagining it would serve a real purpose. They sat together in the living room, the box between them, brainstorming what to put inside. We need something from Mommy, Lily said thoughtfully. After a moment, she ran to her room and came back with a small light blue button. It was from her favorite dress. She always sewed buttons back on if they fell off, but she gave me this one to keep. Ethan looked at the tiny object, a simple mother-of-pearl button. It seemed so small, so fragile, yet it carried the weight of an entire life. It's perfect, he said softly. Lily placed the button carefully in the bottom of the box. Ethan then stood up and went to his desk, returning with a folded napkin. I saved this from the day we met, he admitted, feeling a little embarrassed. You'd drawn a smiling face on it while waiting for the hot chocolate. Lily's eyes widened. You kept it? I did, Ethan said, placing the napkin next to the button. Over the next few minutes, they filled the box with tiny treasures. The seashell from the beach, a dried leaf from the park pressed between book pages, the first hair ribbon Ethan had attempted, and horribly failed, to tie in Lily's hair, the ticket stub from the first movie they'd seen together, and even a sketch of the drawing now framed on his nightstand. Each object came with a story, a shared memory. For every item Lily proposed, Ethan found he had his own recollection, small moments that, before Lily, would have gone unnoticed in his busy life. When they finished, they viewed their collection with satisfaction. Can we add more things later? Lily asked, gently closing the lid. Always, Ethan assured her. It's a box meant to grow along with us. They placed the box on a shelf in the living room, within easy reach for both of them. It wasn't the most valuable object in the apartment, not by a long shot, but Ethan knew, looking at it, that it was irreplaceable. Later that night, after tucking Lily in and reading not one but two stories to celebrate their special day, Ethan returned to his own room. He sat on the edge of his bed, gazing at the framed drawing on the nightstand. 3 stick figures holding hands, a family, his family. The word above his drawn figure, Daddy, now seemed to glow in the dim light. It wasn't just a word, as he realized. It was an identity, a purpose, something no executive title, no bank balance, no professional achievement had ever given him. For the first time, Ethan Cole truly felt like a father. He lay down, still looking at the drawing, letting this new identity envelop him completely. And for the first time in years, he fell asleep without thinking even once about emails, contracts, or pending meetings. Instead, he dreamed of treasure boxes, colorful drawings, and 3 figures holding hands under a bright blue sky. The white envelope with the lab's logo remained unopened on Ethan's desk for almost a whole day. There was no rush in opening it. The DNA test was just a formality suggested by his lawyer as part of the legal adoption process. It'll make the paperwork easier, Dr. Meyer, his trusted lawyer for over a decade, had explained. We want to avoid any future complications. Ethan understood the necessity. He knew the world ran on papers, stamps, and signatures. But for him, the truth had already been established in something far stronger than ink and cellulose. It was in Lily's eyes, identical to Rachel's, in the way she furrowed her brow when concentrating, just like he did, in the inexplicable connection they had formed in such a short time. When he finally opened the envelope, Lily was already asleep in the next room after a night of stories and whispered conversations about the shapes clouds made in the sky. The result, as he expected, only confirmed what his heart already knew. A 99.9998% probability of paternity, cold numbers for a warm truth that had been beating in his chest for months. He was Lily's father. The next morning, he called Margot. The result came, he said, skipping the greetings when she answered. And it confirms the obvious, I imagine, she replied with that calm wisdom that always surprised him. Yes, I'm filing for legal guardianship today. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Margot spoke again, her voice was softer. Rachel would be happy, Mr. Cole, not because of the paper, but for what it represents. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, Margot, for everything you did for them. I just kept a promise, she answered simply. Now you're keeping yours. With Margot's support, the process moved surprisingly fast. His status and connections opened doors. He knew that. But there were still procedures to follow, evaluations to be done, visits by social workers. At each stage, Lily participated with a calmness that impressed even the most experienced professionals. She understands the process better than many adults, the social worker commented after her third visit to the penthouse. It's clear she feels safe here. One evening, as they filled out yet another form, it seemed endless, Ethan finally voiced the question that, in a way, had already been answered. Lily, how do you feel about living with me forever, officially, with papers and everything? She raised her eyes from the drawing she was making, looking genuinely puzzled. I already am living with you, she said plainly, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. Ethan smiled. As always, Lily cut straight to the core, ignoring the adult formalities everyone else fussed over. For her, reality was what they already had, a shared routine, a space that was gradually transforming to fit them, a bond that grew each day. A week later, Margot called Seats, her voice more animated than usual. I found something I think you should see, she said, among Rachel's things that I kept. Can you come by? Ethan went that very afternoon, leaving Lily with her new babysitter, a young education student who came a few times a week when Ethan needed to work. Margot's apartment was the same as ever, warm and modest, but there was something different in her manner, an almost ceremonial look in her eyes, a slight tremor in her usually steady hands. What did you find? Ethan asked, after politely refusing coffee. Margot walked over to the small desk and opened the top drawer. From inside, she took out a faded blue notebook, no bigger than the palm of her hand. Rachel's diary, she said, extending it toward Ethan. I found it yesterday while organizing some old boxes. Ethan looked at the notebook without taking it, as if it was something dangerous. I'm not sure I should, he murmured, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a private intimacy that wasn't his. Rachel had no secrets, Margot said gently, especially after she got sick. She wanted everything to be clear, sorted out. I think she'd want you to read it. Still hesitant, Ethan accepted the notebook. The cover felt smooth from frequent use. The pages were slightly warped, as if touched by tears. May I take it home to read? He asked, unable to picture himself flipping through those pages under Margot's watchful gaze. Of course, she agreed. Take all the time you need. The diary stayed in the inside pocket of Ethan's coat all afternoon and evening. He felt its weight, not physical but emotional, as if he were carrying more than just paper and ink, but years of Rachel's thoughts, feelings, and memories. Only after Lily had fallen asleep, after the usual routine of bath, story, and quiet conversation in the dimly lit bedroom, Did Ethan allow himself to sit in his reading chair and open the diary? The first page took him back in time immediately. Today the test came back positive. I'm having a baby, our baby, Ethan. It's strange to write your name here, knowing you'll never read these words. Or maybe, one day, who knows? Life is stranger than fiction, they say. Rachel's handwriting, always so artistic, danced across the pages. Ethan turned them slowly, absorbing every word and emotion. There were entries about her decision not to tell him, about the first months of pregnancy alone, about Margot's quiet support. I felt the baby move for the first time today, a little flutter, like butterfly wings. I wondered if it's a boy or a girl, if it'll have your eyes, your smile, if it'll inherit your amazing ability to organize the world into spreadsheets and charts. I laughed to myself, imagining a baby with a tiny calculator. The following pages recounted Lily's birth, the sleepless nights, the small victories, the first smile, the first word, the first steps. Rachel wrote with raw honesty, neither self-pitying nor idealizing single motherhood. Lily turned 3 today. She asked about her dad for the first time. I showed her your photo, explained you worked far away, building big buildings. She accepted that explanation with the simplicity of a child. But for how long? One day, she'll have harder questions. I hope I have better answers by then. With each entry, Ethan felt closer to Rachel, and yet more distant. Closer, because through her words, he could almost hear her voice and see her face as she faced each day with the steady courage he remembered. Distant, because every page was a painful reminder of the moments he'd missed, the stories he could have shared, the family they might have been. Then he reached the entries about her illness, the shock of the diagnosis, her determination to fight, her constant worry not about herself but about Lily's future. They spoke of months today, not years. I tried not to show fear in front of Lily, but I cried in the bathroom after she fell asleep, not for what I'm losing, but for what she'll lose. Still, I have to believe somehow the universe will watch over her. The final pages were spaced further apart, written in shakier handwriting. Ethan could sense the physical effort it took Rachel to keep writing in her final days. I've set everything up with Margot. When I'm gone, Lily will know how to find you. I pray that you welcome her with open arms. Not out of obligation, but by choice. Maybe someday he'll come back, not for me. But if he comes back for her, that's enough love. The last sentence struck Ethan like a physical blow. He closed the diary, unable to continue. Tears he had managed to hold back now flowed freely down his face. Rachel had believed in him. Even after he left her behind, even as she faced single motherhood and then terminal illness, she never lost faith in his humanity, in his capacity to love Lily, in his ability to make the right choice when the time came. He sat in the dimly lit living room for hours, the diary resting on his lap, consumed by deep regrets, for the time wasted, for the years he'd never have with Rachel, for Lily's first words and steps he'd never witnessed. But with the regret came gratitude as well, for this second chance Rachel had given him, even from afar, even after her death. The opportunity to know and love this extraordinary little person who was part of both of them. When he finally moved, it was nearly dawn. He put the diary carefully in his drawer and went to check on Lily. He found her awake, sitting on her bed, staring out the window at the night sky. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently, sitting beside her. Lily shook her head. "I was thinking about Mommy. Sometimes when I look at the stars, it feels like she's watching too." Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. "I'm sure she is." They sat in silence for a few moments, contemplating the few stars visible beyond the city lights. Then, without warning, Lily turned to him and asked, "Daddy, why didn't you stay with Mommy?" The direct, unexpected question made Ethan feel as though the world had stopped spinning. He realized he couldn't offer a complicated or half-true explanation. Lily deserved honesty, as painful as it might be. He straightened up on the bed, took a deep breath, and gave her the simplest truth he had. "Because I was foolish and ran away from something good. But now I'm not going to run away from you." Lily studied him with those wise eyes that seemed to see far beyond the surface. Then, slowly, she moved closer and hugged him. a delicate, almost fragile embrace that carried enormous weight. In that wordless silence, Ethan felt something he never expected to receive. Forgiveness, not just from Lily, but somehow from Rachel as well. As if, through that small hug, she too was saying, "It's okay. You're here now." In the days that followed, as the legal guardianship process neared its conclusion, Ethan was filled with renewed energy, a desire for transformation. It wasn't enough for Lily to live in his home. His home needed to truly become theirs, a reflection of the life they were building together. He started with her room, no longer a guest room but entirely reimagined. They painted the walls together, creating a gentle gradient from sky blue at the ceiling to sea green near the floor. Like the sky meeting the ocean, Lily explained. By the window, Ethan set up a special reading corner, a comfy little armchair, a low bookshelf Lily could reach, a lamp that projected stars on the ceiling. Their nightly reading sessions took on new meaning, becoming not just part of a routine, but a ritual of connection. The transformation didn't stop indoors. On the small balcony that had once been purely decorative, Ethan and Lily created a garden. They bought colorful pots, special soil, and little tools sized for a child's hands. Together, they planted seeds of flowers Lily had chosen carefully. Sunflowers, daisies, violets, Rachel's favorites. Rachel's. "The flowers will grow with us," Lily declared as she gently covered the seeds with soil. Ethan just smiled, amazed at her natural wisdom. The whole apartment changed. What used to be a minimalist, impersonal space now pulsed with life. Framed children's drawings hung on the walls, picture books mixed with economics texts on the shelves. Toys occasionally found their way under the couch cushions, but the biggest transformation, Ethan knew, was happening inside him. The man who once lived for the next contract, the next acquisition, the next billion, now found joy in little moments, helping with homework, teaching Lily to tie her shoes, cheering enthusiastically at her school performances. His schedule, once packed with back-to-back meetings and business dinners, now reserved sacred blocks of time for school recitals, afternoons at the park, and Saturday night movie marathons. When he had to travel, which happened less often now, he took Lily whenever possible. If he couldn't, they video chatted every evening, sharing stories from their day. One evening, as he prepared dinner, something unthinkable in the old Ethan, who survived on takeout and upscale restaurants, he noticed Lily watching him from the kitchen counter where she was perched drawing. "What is it?" he asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Lily smiled, a grin that lit up her whole face. "So now the house smells like good food and laughter." The simple observation hit Ethan deeply. It was true. The apartment, once sterile in its perfection, now carried the aromas of home-cooked meals, the sound of little feet running down the hall, the echo of shared laughter. It had come alive. "It does," he agreed, smiling back. "Do you like it? It's the best smell in the world," Lily declared with the absolute conviction only children have. Ethan realized he didn't need anything else. All the symbols of success he'd accumulated, the penthouse office, the luxury cars, the properties around the world, felt empty compared to the richness of standing in that kitchen, making tomato sauce pasta for a messy-haired girl who looked at him as if he were the center of the universe. Their little rituals anchored their days. Energetic music at breakfast, when they danced around the kitchen while making toast and cutting fruit. An afternoon walk when Ethan left work early to pick her up from school so they could stroll home together, noticing subtle seasonal changes in the park trees. And, most precious of all, the bedtime moment when they told each other about their day. The good parts, the hard parts, the hopes for tomorrow. Lily no longer asked to leave the bedroom door ajar. She didn't need the hallway light on. She fell asleep calmly, secure in the knowledge that if she woke in the night, she wouldn't be alone. Because now she knew, with unshakable certainty that only true love brings, that he was there, and always would be. Sunday dawned with an almost magical brightness, as though summer wanted to show its kinder side before departing. It was one of those rare days when New York's sky seemed endlessly blue, with not a single cloud to mar its perfection. Ethan woke early, to his own surprise. In the old days, as he thought of the time before Lily, Sundays were for catching up on lost sleep or working uninterrupted at the office. Now, he woke eager not to miss a single moment of the day they had ahead. In the kitchen, he meticulously packed a picnic basket, crustless sandwiches, just the way Lily liked them. Watermelon slices cut into star shapes with the molds they had bought together. Colorful juice bottles, homemade cookies they'd baked the night before, some more burnt than others, thanks to Ethan insisting Lily be involved in each step. "Can I bring my camera?" Lily asked, entering the kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Of course," Ethan replied, smiling at how excited she was. "It's a special day." And it was indeed special. That morning marked exactly 1 year since a 5-year-old girl had approached him on the sidewalk, holding a photograph in both hands. 1 year since his life had completely changed, they decided to celebrate with a picnic in the very park where it all began. Not the one near the penthouse, which they visited almost every day, but the park by the old building where Ethan used to work. When they arrived, the park was fairly quiet for a summer Sunday. They found the perfect spot under a large oak tree, with enough shade to protect them from the sun, but open enough to see the sky through the branches. Ethan spread out a checkered blanket, another recent purchase made for occasions like this, and began arranging the food. Lily, too excited to sit still, kicked off her shoes and ran through the grass, her laughter echoing like music. From where he sat, Ethan could see her clearly. He watched with a serenity that still surprised him as she interacted with the world. The confident way she approached other kids, the kindness with which she bent down to examine an insect, the pure joy in her free, unguarded movements. It was like seeing Rachel again, that freedom of spirit that had once drawn him in, that authenticity he'd never learned to replicate. He was so absorbed that he hardly noticed the figure approaching until she was almost beside him. "I thought I might find you here," Margot said, carrying a small basket covered with a cloth. "Margot," Ethan exclaimed, standing quickly. "This is a wonderful surprise." "Lily told me about the picnic when I saw her yesterday," Margot explained, her eyes shining with fondness. "I brought some ginger cookies, Rachel's favorites." A wave of emotion washed over Ethan at the mention of Rachel's name. It no longer cut like a knife, but rather evoked a gentle melancholy, like a distant melody he could still hear. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and hugged Margot sincerely. She was initially startled by the show of affection, but soon relaxed and returned the hug. "Thank you for taking care of Lily," Ethan said softly, so only she could hear, "for everything. If it weren't for you, I might never have found my daughter." As they drew apart, Margot's eyes were moist. "She just needed someone to look at her with their heart," the older woman said, smiling through her emotion. "Now she has that, and so do you." Lily, noticing Margot's arrival, dashed back to their picnic spot and flung herself into the older woman's arms with the total abandon only children can show. "You came," she exclaimed. "Now everyone's here." The three of them settled on the blanket, sharing the food Ethan had prepared and the cookies Margot had brought. Their conversation flowed naturally, covering everyday topics: Lily's school, Margot's new painting hobby, Ethan's plan to take Lily on vacation next month to see the Grand Canyon. There was nothing extraordinary about that afternoon. No major event or dramatic revelation, just three people enjoying a picnic on a sunny Sunday. But for Ethan, there was a completeness in that simple moment no professional triumph had ever given him. It was an ordinary day, yet deeply meaningful. After the meal, while Margot and Ethan talked about the possibility of enrolling Lily in piano lessons, apparently, Rachel had been a talented pianist in her youth, something Ethan never knew. Lily roamed the park with her camera, snapping photos of trees, birds, and occasionally Margot or Ethan when they weren't looking. Suddenly, she ran back, eyes shining with an idea. "Let's take a picture of us," she proposed, already adjusting the camera settings. "Great idea," Ethan said. "Want me to take one of you and Margot?" Lily shook her head firmly. "No, of all of us. Me, you, and Margot. I'll set the timer." With the confidence of someone who'd practiced many times, Lily placed the camera on a nearby bench, checked the angle carefully, then set the timer. Then, she dashed back to them. "Hurry! 10 seconds!" she shouted, positioning herself between Ethan and Margot. At the last second, though, she changed her mind and jumped into Ethan's lap, throwing her arms around his neck in a big hug. Surprised but delighted, Ethan hugged her back, his face lit by a genuine smile. The camera clicked at exactly that moment. Ethan and Lily locked in an embrace, beaming, with the sun forming a golden halo behind them and Margot beside them, her face radiant with the joy of witnessing that bond. Later, as the sun began to set and the warm afternoon turned into a cool evening, they said goodbye to Margot with the promise of dinner later in the week. On the way home, Lily fell asleep in the car, tired out from the day's excitement, still clutching her camera in her hands. Back at the apartment, carrying Lily asleep to her room, Ethan felt that now familiar expansion in his chest, a love so large it sometimes felt like it wouldn't fit inside him. The next morning, after breakfast, Lily was unusually quiet, focused on something at the living room table. When Ethan approached, he saw she had printed the picnic photo and was placing it in a simple frame. "It turned out nice, didn't it?" she asked proudly. "It's perfect," Ethan agreed, genuinely impressed by the quality of the shot. The late afternoon sun had lent a nearly magical glow, making the image almost ethereal. With solemn ceremony, Lily walked to the wall in the living room where they'd already hung two images, the old photograph of Ethan and Rachel in the sunflower field, and Lily's drawing of the three of them holding hands. Using tape, she stuck the new photo beside the others. Then, picking up a colored marker, she carefully wrote under the three images, in big, slightly crooked letters, "Our family." Ethan felt a lump in his throat as he read those simple words. Our family. Not the conventional family people might expect, mother, father, daughter, but the family they'd built from the circumstances life had dealt them. A chosen family, united by bonds stronger than blood or legal documents. Lily looked at him, awaiting his reaction. Ethan simply smiled and hugged her, unable to find words for what he felt. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep peacefully and Ethan was getting ready for bed, he paused once more in front of the wall with the photographs. The contrast among them told a story, his younger self with Rachel in the past, the drawing that marked his acceptance as a father, and now the new photo capturing their present reality, him and Lily, together, building something new. Ethan smiled at the images, marveling at life's unpredictability. How could he have spent so long chasing things he thought mattered, power, status, wealth, when everything he truly needed was in simpler things, a light touch of arms around his neck, a clumsy homemade breakfast, a whispered "daddy" at night. Maybe Rachel had known all along. Maybe that was why, even in the end, she believed in him enough to entrust him with her daughter, because she saw past the facade he'd built and recognized the man he could become. The story didn't end with grand promises or dramatic twists. There were no guarantees it would always be easy, or that they wouldn't face challenges ahead. But there was something deeper, more enduring. Love, presence, and belonging. And for Ethan Cole, the man who once built an empire but lived in emptiness, that was more than enough. It was everything. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.